click it and you get taken to like a very Reddit like looking page where you would have like discussions and talks and stuff.
Said the R word already. We're getting demonetized, but yeah.
So that's like, that would be cool.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think some of these websites, they come at from the super commercial angle or something like that. It's like, look, I get it. You got to get money or you got to show the big wigs that you can get them money, whatever the case may be. But it's like, you could be user friendly at the same time. Like,
Yeah, I mean, if I were to make it right, like it costs money to have a website up. How do I, if I'm just making it because I feel like this is what I want, how do I make sure I don't, lose money on it? That's the
Right.
question, right? How do I make that work and where other people can use it where I don't? It was like, do I have a Patreon for it? Is it subscription only? You have to pay $2 a month, or I don't know. You can't do 2 because the fees eat those money. That's why people do 5.
Yeah.
Usually.
I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm an idiot, right? So we'll preface that, but I feel like when people talk about the hosting costs, they're very much overblown unless your website is serving like millions of people, at which point it's like, okay, like there are dozens of different
Sure,
ways to try and monetize at that point.
I
so,
can I can start it and host it on, let's say, I was thinking I would use something called Dino.
Okay.
And their infrastructure, which is quite good. I would probably be able to until I have hundreds of thousands of people on it, be able to do it for $15 a month. But then I'm eating $15 a month, right? But something like and then when you get to hundreds of thousands, then maybe there's a premium feature where people pay $5 or something, and maybe 2% of people do that, and that's enough to offset the $15.
Right.
But yeah, it would be cool. Maybe I should actually just sit down and actually hack away at it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be a good project, and you never know. Like, you'd think there's coverage these days, right? We're 20 years into the new millennium, and everything has been done and all of this stuff. But like Amazon's not all that old, and they basically waged war on the book market before they started waging war on literally everybody else with shipping and logistics and all of that, and hosting, and all of that stuff. So it's like good reads, like right now it's ubiquitous to talk about, right? But like they don't have such like a death grip on it that you couldn't come in and if you had something usable and you could get it marketed, maybe you could have an alternate there.
Yeah, one of the things I've been looking at, that's like, I have been doing a little research with it, that I think is the hardest thing for me to decide on if there is something that's good enough, is I need some sort of ISBN book API that has like, so I have a database of books to access somehow.
Sure.
Like I can't make a database of books on my own with every book in existence.
Right.
So it's got to be out there somewhere. Too many people have used that.
There are
You'd think
APIs.
Libraries would have access to it, or make it available in some way.
But some cost a lot, like a fair amount of money to use, or are incomplete. I haven't found one that I thought was good enough yet. But not done that extensive research on it. But if anyone's listening and know about a really good book API,
right,
hit me up.
All you book editors that I know are, there's 2 of you now, so one of the 2 of you must be, if not
I'm
both.
sure you have all the answers.
But, yeah,
because there's no way, right, that I get the users potentially to add the books, and it would be a mess. And it's like they want to be able to write Dresden, and then all the Dresden books comes down in a pop down, and they click the book they want to add. Like otherwise, like there's no way it shouldn't work like that. Otherwise, people won't use it.
Right.
Like that's how I want it to be. I want to just be able to quickly put it in.
So anyway,
death.
Mm-hmm. Death.
I wanted to go like death, but I was like, right now it's more like, I guess that more points out to what I'm talking about, what I want. But then you went death, so
yeah,
you could have done either.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because like I had the opportunity to watch it like Friday night. It was just me and the kids and everything like that, so I get to decide what's on TV. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have Saturday night to myself, right? And my brother's been coming over on the weekends, but we hadn't heard from him, so normally he would have been there by like Friday night easily. And so I'm like, cool, I'll have, 4 hours to watch it, whatever. And so around dinner time, I throw it on. And I'm like, Jesus, the extended version is 4.5 hours. It's 4 hours and 20 minutes. And I'm like, okay. So I put it on during dinner. My brothers come over, like everything's chaos and everything. But when that scene came on, I was like, look, guys, it's a 4.5 hour movie. I get it. But this is the part I wanted to watch. Okay. I've been waiting months for this. So, but yeah, it's it's a long movie. Like,
yeah. Put it on yesterday morning, like with morning coffee right out of bed. It's just like I realized it's 4.5 hours. Like, oh, this is going to take me like all day. And it pretty much did in between other things I had to do.
It's a job, man. Like, that's crazy. Like I love the movie, but man, I forgot how long it was. So
yeah, it was still extremely accurate to the books. Like,
very.
If we got anything close to that today of any other adaptation, we'd be salivating over it. But I know that there were people who were unhappy, like, oh, they took out the Scouring the Shire, they did whatever on detail that was not completely accurate. It was like, holy hell, those things were so accurate to exactly what happened.
Yeah, I feel
the
like
breaking is probably my biggest pet peeve.
Why?
Why? Yeah, why?
Because that doesn't happen in the books.
Yes, it did.
Which one? Saruman's or
no.
Gandalf's?
Gandalf's staff getting destroyed by the Witch King of Angmar.
I didn't recall it either, to be honest. And so, like, that was something that I was kind of looking for. And so it's like the battles are always kind of weird because I just feel like Tolkien wasn't like he didn't want to focus on the battles. So it's like, and then the Witch King pushes in the gates with Grond, and then he like walks 10 feet in, and then he hears the Rohirrim, and he's like, well, fuck, I guess I better go deal with that then. And he turns around and walks back out. But
every time it's like, that was exactly what happened in the book. Like they show Grond and it's rolling up to the thing, and like they're Grond. It's like, that was described. That's not just Peter Jackson.
Right. Yeah. No, and it's fun because I was definitely talking to my brother a fair bit about it, where it was like these lines are like verbatim. It's not like hamming it up. Like Gimli's whole how will an elf go underground where a dwarf fears to tread, like all of that stuff. Like it's like changed. They shake up Theoden's speech because I think like they're parts of it that Éomer gives, later and that sort of thing. Obviously, like some of the characters are shook up. It kind of annoyed me. Like Gandalf is way more antagonistic in the movie, especially towards Pippin, because it's like he's hard on Pippin, but he still like laughs it off in the books. Whereas like he's just kind of seems like a dick in the movie. For whatever reason, they decided to make it this whole what's the word I was looking for? Like Mission Impossible thing with the lighting of the beacons and make it all dramatic. Whereas like the beacons were lit on his way, so it's like there are changes and there are quibbles, but if you get down to it, like if you've read the books like we just did and then go watch the movie, you're like, oh shit, that's the part. I remember seeing that in my brain, so.
Yeah, they didn't describe Denethor and the Palantir, which I thought would have explained something.
And I was telling that to them. I was like, yeah, I mean, Denethor is just a dude because Tolkien leans into this whole like bloodlines, and Gandalf is literally an angel wizard, and all of this shit. But like Denethor is actually a pretty strong leader for Gondor. He's just loopy because he's been, staring into the Palantir, and that would have been a good thing to have shown. Like him just be like, let's cover that up. Gandalf's here. He doesn't need to see that shit. Like if you catch Denethor in the bathroom doing coke, it would have made so much more sense what he was doing.
I think they kind of hint at it in the extended edition. The Palantir Aragorn goes to commune with seems to be like placed.
No, that was one from Orthanc from Sauron.
I was going to say, yeah, I think that was that one.
It looked like it was just placed in there. Like that's
because they had it because Gandalf took it and had it, and so they had it at Gondor. But it was the one from Orthanc from Saruman, which was the one that Aragorn said is his to own and use as he will.
Right. Yeah, and Gandalf keeps trying to tell him like, "Hey, this is super dangerous," and it's like, "Don't you trust me?" Type of thing. But I also the scene where like that we're talking about, where Aragorn goes and grabs the Palantir to like draw Sauron's eye. I was telling him that I was like, I wished we had focused more on this in the movies, because it's much clearer in the books that Gandalf is playing 4-dimensional chess against Sauron, and that Sauron can only look at so many things, and he's got basic assumptions about how he thinks the ring and people who acquire the ring are going to work. And so like a big part of the fact that Aragorn went to Gondor was to draw Sauron's attention that direction, away from Frodo and Sam. The fact that he picks up the Palantir is again a gambit to get him focused, because he thinks that only that somebody has the ring could have beaten him at Pelennor Fields. It's just completely unthinkable that anything else would have happened. And so he's so sure that Aragorn has the ring and has taken the ring that he's not worried about somebody destroying it. That's unthinkable to him. He's worried about somebody using it to topple his empire and become the next Dark Lord. He's like, great. I mean, evil wins, but I want to be the winner. I want to be the Dark Lord,
The hubris of the evil faction of Sauron, of the ring, and how everything it worked was like exactly what it tried to do to Sam. Of, you could be the great king and you can own all of the gardens in the world and decide how they're going to be planted, but he doesn't want that. He wants to have his own garden and work it with his own hands. And
Right.
that humility is what saved him. And it's what they don't understand. They can't comprehend it. And so that's why they were, I guess, resistant to it. The way it was described to me as a kid when I was asking what's going on is that the hobbits were magic resistant. It's like, that's not quite what it is. They're just, they're simple people. And that's
simple, not in simple, but they just they don't have these life. Desires. They don't go on adventures because they don't see the point. There's nothing that they need out there. There is no, wanderlust for the most part or anything like that. They just,
unless they're promised salted pork and stuff on the other end, then maybe you'll get them out.
Like if hobbits didn't have bacon and you told them, hey, in Gondor the most magical thing in existence exists and it's freaking bacon, you might have had like
a hobbit would go on a food blog tour. Oh, absolutely.
Like you'd have a crusade of hobbits invading Gondor, with their pots and pans and their smoking pipes, like, bring us the bacon. But they've got everything that they need, somehow. So but it's good.
Fun movie. There's like 3 major battles in this movie. They all blurred in my memory until reading the books. It's like, oh, these are, there was separate things here, and there was something else over there.
Are you saying like Osgiliath into Pelennor Fields is one of them, or
pretty much?
And then the Black Gate would be another.
Yeah, so there's Pelennor Fields and there's the Black Gate, and then there was like the things leading up to the Pelennor Fields, and just like those are like 3 different incidents that they all just kind of like merged.
Yeah. It's definitely shortened for the movie that like Osgiliath to Pelennor Fields is all but like it's a prelude to, oh, by the way, we're being invaded now. The movie kind of almost implies that it's like maybe it took place over a couple of days or whatever, which I think is what happens in the books and whatnot, because it's like it takes some time to, have the defenders and Denethor to pitch it, Faramir and all of that.
Wimey, right, with her healing, and you see Faramir, and that's before they go to the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they did have a couple of days. He did do the healing for like a day, and then people were trying to recover, because there's a point from between Pelennor Fields and the Battle at the Black Gate. There was like a couple weeks of like needing to rest and eat and muster more people and things like that.
Bury the dead,
Yeah.
So like that part, there was definitely a bit more time, but part of that was Aragorn's succession to the throne as well, right? But like I wish they had covered that somewhat as well, because like I broke that down for my brother. That it was like one of the fun details of it is that Aragorn won't go into Gondor, because like, sure, you guys all think I'm the king and all of this stuff, but history's going to remember me as the guy who won. History's going to remember me as I showed up with the Rohirrim and a bunch of wraiths, and I beat both armies and conquered Gondor and Mordor, and I'm going to be remembered as a conqueror. You know,
the conversation that they had in the throne hall of Gondor, Minas Tirith, of like, this is what we need to do against the blockades. If they put that in a tent and then they had like a throwaway line of like, I'm not walking in there as a king until they're ready for me. Right. That's all it would have taken. But of course, they had a very pretty set and they wanted to use it and show off that he's king now. And and Gimli sitting in the steward's chair.
And with like one of the best lines in the movie, like, you know, certainty of death, small chance of survival. What are we waiting for? You know, like that's just a day in our life at this point, you know, like,
I mean, still, it is criminal that they cut the whole Underdark Pass thing from the not extended edition. Like with Gimli blowing the ghosts away and
from the
that, like
and the discussion with the king and like like 80% of that or whatever is cut. Like I think there are a couple of things that are put in, but like my brother is like, I'm sure this is the extended edition because like I think the Avalanche of Skulls is not in the theatrical, it's not,
or something like that. So like I've been watching the extended since they came out. So like it used to be like I could tell the difference, but anymore I'm just like,
I don't bother.
It's not 100%, but
the discussion with the pirates, Gimli knocking the bow.
Yeah, like
that was Peter Jackson, right? The one that he shot.
Oh, was it?
So Peter Jackson, he hit himself as one of the people, one of those mercenaries. I'm pretty sure. I think it was the one that got shot. I think. Gotcha. But I didn't go looking at the trivia.
I know he's like the gate man at Bree or something like that. Like it's Helm's Deep is what I'm thinking. Like he's in the rain on the wall in Helm's Deep, but I didn't realize he was one of the pirates. So that's funny. It would make sense because he looks half like a pirate anyway, right?
Yeah,
you know, but,
right.
And like at that time, especially, but yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an honor to be shot by Legolas with a bow that's been bumped by Gimli.
Right. And then Gimli's like, he's like, oh, I fucked up, but I'm like, that's what we warned you was gonna happen, you know, like
I like how Gimli's like even whispers to Legolas right before, make sure you aim right. Knock.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because like I used the meme when they finally show up at Pelennor Fields and Legolas is like running and he shoots a bunch of things. And it's like, there we go, 18. And they're like, what? It's like, Legolas, how many arrows did you bring? 18. And I killed 18 orcs. You're welcome. You know, like.
Seems like he brought significantly more for that battle because he was counting like 34 or 35. And then you did 3 on the Oliphant and then just like still only counts as 1.
No, because that only counts as 1.
But he used 3 arrows.
Sure, but it only counts as 1 kill.
Yeah.
I do wish they kept in the rivalry with Éomer and Gimli about whether Galadriel was the fairest lady, or I don't know. Maybe they couldn't handle another Gimli being awesome moment or something. But I fucking
another clip, you know, like. Yeah, it was fun too. Like, I don't know if I had just seen it before and forgotten, but one of the little details that I caught this time that I'm pretty sure is mostly in the extended as well is like, so after Sam and Frodo get out of the tower where Frodo was being kept after Shelob and all of that nonsense, you see an orc run off with the mithril shirt. And at first I was like, wait a minute, doesn't he get the mithril shirt still? And I'm like, oh shit, the mouth has it. And so the mouth of Sauron has it at the gate, and that's how he got it. They don't show like it being delivered or whatever, but you see the orc literally in the foreground holding the mithril shirt and run off screen. And then later at the black gate, when they're like, "Oh, hey, by the way, we found this. He was important to you, wasn't he?" You know, and they're just trying to bluff Gandalf and Aragorn and everybody. You know, they did a really good job setting that up. So
in the book, I think the mouth had just their hobbit clothes, and that was enough of a tell, but in the movie they decided to keep them in their hobbit clothes, so the mithril shirt was good enough. And it was great.
They put on the orcish clothes at one point, but
the armor over the clothes, I guess, whatever. And I think it was a better decision to put Shelob and all that into the third movie and have that be a major focus instead of Sam and Frodo just wandering for several days in Mordor, because
Right.
the timing got a little bit like, it was so important for you to see that this happened in the battle at the exact moment when Sauron needed to be distracted, right when they're walking up. It's like that timing is really important anyway, so you need to condense that. But also them just walking in Mordor is kind of boring.
And
So
there's still some misses, because that was one of the things that my brother had brought up was like, like for instance, the Witch King, right? Like, it's very important that the Witch King can be killed by no man and he gets stabbed, but it's kind of a concerted effort between the Hobbit and Eowyn and everything. But what they also don't mention is that it probably lines up, pretty close to shit that's happening in Mordor and all of this other
it
stuff.
might,
And
specifically it happens because Merry had a sword from the white,
That's
the Barrow
right.
White.
You're right.
And
Yeah.
that's like, so when Pippin gets into the service of Denethor, he is given a sword. When Merry offers his service to Theoden, he has his sword already, and it was
Right.
dull, and then they went and sharpened it and everything. He had the sword from the Barrow White from when they went to Tom Bombadil, and that was spelled against the Witch King of Angmar. And so, like, I was really worried because I hadn't seen this movie in a long time that they weren't going to show Merry stabbing him, because that was really, really important to anyone who
they
knows.
do. Yeah.
They do. And you even see a little burst of light of some form of magical happen right when he stabs him in the heel. And so that's a tell for anyone who knows and cares. And then it's still the I am no man moment. And
right. Which takes the spotlight, but there's more going on. So
a way better female empowerment moment than the one in Marvel where they all randomly just come in together.
No shit, you don't say.
Everybody hates that, but more importantly, it always to me harkens back to Buffy, where it's like, no mortal weapon can kill me. It's like, are you sure it's been a couple hundred years? Let's try this rocket launcher, so.
Oh, I always think of the Mummy.
What does that
no mortal weapon can kill him, then we'll have to find some immortal ones.
Right. So yeah, it's just good details. Like, if they don't get everything spot on, they acknowledge a lot of it, that, like, you get the Dunedain talking about, like, oh, what if he's going to cross to the north? And then they're like, oh shit, he's not crossing to the north, at Isgiliath, where they shoot the guy, and it's like, Tin Soldier just fell down the stairs, my dudes, and you're at war. What do you think it means? They're all like confused, like,
yeah,
get to the water, like, yeah. So
probably the biggest deviation, in my opinion, is that Aragorn gets Narsil in this movie instead of when they set out. It's a great dramatic moment. It's Elrond throwing more support behind him. It's like,
he doesn't have
really
pockets.
Good.
Where was he keeping that?
Cloaks hold many secrets, like, apparently.
Right? Like, how long were you holding that behind your back there, Elrond? So anyway, yeah.
So that was a shock to me reading the book. Like, that's when he picked up the sword.
Reluctant to be king bit, whereas in in the book he's pretty much ready to be king from the get-go.
I mean, I think you have it both ways. Like, in the book, like, from Helm's Deep, I feel like, or at least just before, I feel like he really kind of is like, clearly my people need me, and I'm going to be here to do whatever I can do. And I think you see that a decent amount in the movies, where Aragorn is like, right out with me. And then especially in Return of the King, while they're mustering the Rohirrim, you hear Theoden complain about it a lot, but they shaded that in the movie of their conversation with Saruman. So it was like Saruman got to him a little bit, that it was like, you didn't stop anybody at Helm's Deep. Aragorn did it. And he's trying to drive that wedge. And so you hear Theoden, and then Theoden get a little petulant about, well, we're not going to go help Gondor because they didn't help us. It's like, yeah, they're a little busy, my dude.
The king of Gondor's right there.
Other evil, yeah. And so, you get that moment where everyone's like not sure he's going to say, let's go help him or not. And, like, you haven't seen Aragorn run like that, at least not since the Hobbits were taken. But yeah. So I feel like they strike a pretty maybe it's not spot on, but it's a pretty consistent thing. But you also miss out on a lot of their road travel with like Gandalf and Aragorn quibbling back and forth about him using the Palantir and a bunch of other stuff that kind of even in the extended doesn't show up. Which is a shame because by then Aragorn is like, I thought you wanted me to be king. Am I not being kingly enough for you, Gandalf? Be like, everything that I do is kingly because I am a king, so but
yeah, he was more forceful about being king as they're like getting into Rohan and they're talking to Theoden and like basically talking to him as equals instead of as a ranger to a king.
Sure.
But I mean, you do get to see in the movies, like he is warming up to it and he knows it's happening anyway. And so it's just like he's getting to the point where it's now going to be ready and facing something that it's been a hold over him his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's different, but it also feels the same.
Talking about the kingliness because they make such a big deal about it in the books about him having healer's hands and stuff. I brought up the quibble that it's like they brought the whole conversation of Ethelis and Kingsfoil for some reason all the way up into Fellowship of the Ring. Even though that happens at the healing houses, but they still at least have him tending Éowyn, in the healing houses and stuff. And so it's just like, it's just a scene and he's got wet hands and just whatever else, which is gross, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it was just like, why move that? It. Yeah. And why not highlight why this is important? Because they're like, because between that and the Dimholt Road, like my brother was like, oh, what a stupid D&D moment where it's like, oh, we're going to go side quest and just level up and stuff like Gandalf had done when he fought the Balrog. And I'm like, no, like, I get what you're saying. And it's funny. Haha, I'll laugh for you. But like him going down the Dimholt Road was actually another one of those like pins in, him being the king. That only the king could influence and call this authority. Not only the king, but the king would have healing hands. So it was more like him just tacking on tally marks to the prophecy of like, yeah, really, I am the king. I've got the king's sword. I've called in his old debts. I've got healer's hands and stuff. And so by the time you get to the end of Pelennor Fields, like, who would argue? He's checked all of the boxes. And whatever. And so like, to me, like Dimholt Road, like it could be seen that way. It could absolutely be like 3 jackasses just walked out into a haunted fortress and they're going to get eaten. That's what the Rohirrim thought. But it's actually important that they did that because not only did they bring a third army to the Battle of Pelennor Fields that really did turn the tide in a lot of ways.
An unkillable army.
Right. But it's like, oh, you got wraiths, we got wraiths. Let's do this. But it was also another check mark. So it was equally important from like a political perspective that he was able to wield that authority, So
yeah, I do wish they had some form of line explaining why it was Aragorn tending to Éowyn and the dangers there because he had the magic kingly hands and the Ethelis and everything. Like it didn't need to be as comical as it went in the books of the herbalist guy saying of like, oh, it's a weed and we always pull it out and it's not useful for anything. Someone thinks it's good for headaches, but then there's the old woman in the corner saying there's this story prophecy that the king is going to do it. It's like, it was very funny. Maybe not the right timing for a movie, but like something should have explained why it was Aragorn doing it, I think, for anyone who's never read the book.
Sure.
Yeah. Still incredibly book accurate. Like to anyone who cared, it's just like, I don't know.
Do any of you have you have a favorite character in the books, but in the movie your favorite character is like someone else because they are changed enough that it just is different?
I might have adjacent to this in the sense that like I think Aragorn is my favorite character from the books just because I always liked the scene from Bree where he, basically is like being all scary and shit and he doesn't even have a sword. you know, like they're like, oh my God, watch out, Mr. Frodo, he's armed. And he's like, what, this old thing? And he like breaks out the broken pommel of the sword. And he's just carrying around a broken sword. And so like I had fallen in love with him and his character from then on. And like I think my dad had kind of like prepped me that it's like, oh yeah, he's gonna be the king and all of this shit. So it wasn't some big revelation to me. It was just watching the journey. But in the movies, Gimli is absolutely my favorite character. And I have some kind of weird affinity with dwarves, which is funny because I'm over 6 feet tall. But like I
Well,
like their
well.
yeah, I know, right? I've been drinking already. It's the morning ale. So but yeah, like I just love the cantankerousness and their directness and just all of that stuff. So it's like, yeah, I'm sorry I'm too tall and haven't spent my entire life in the mines and shit, but you know, I will headbutt a dwarf and I think it would be fun, you know, but Gimli is absolutely my favorite from the movies, period. But
He's my favorite in the movies too. I think maybe Aragorn in the books. I'm not sure.
And I mean that's just because we're picking a favorite. Like Aragorn is fantastic in the movies. You know, Aragorn and Gimli is fantastic in the movies. I don't even hate Legolas, even though, you know, like there are things to chip away at why he's not on top and whatever. Like Legolas is all but a Mary Sue character, and that just makes sense from, you know, he's an elf and whatever too. But
that's what they're supposed to be.
Right. You know, it's ridiculous, and yet it's like there's whole nations of those guys running around kicking ass, you know. But yeah, so like I like all of the characters for different reasons. Like I definitely have much more respect and affinity for Gandalf these days as well. But Gimli's fun and funny and, you know, holds the line, and you know he's just indispensable. So
I've always loved Gimli from the movies since I was a kid. He was always just like that. I love the cantankerous dwarfishness. It's always the greatest. And so I was really happy when reading the books. I think that's book accurate. They didn't change it for the movies just for people like me. It's exactly what he is, and through. I love dwarves. And yeah. So he's definitely on top tier for me. But like I love Aragorn and all his complexity, Frodo and Sam too. I think all of the main characters really, like, they're all very interesting, and I care about them all in their different qualities.
Right.
I even find it like the Mouth of Sauron character. He's very weird and strange. You get like a paragraph of description of him, and it's just like, wait, I need to know more there. What do you mean? Like he doesn't have a name because he's only been going by the title for so long that he even forgot his own name? He's a Black Numenorean. What the fuck is that? It's
right.
Yeah.
Well, and what's funny is there's probably an entire volume dedicated to this guy somewhere. So, you know, like, like the world building is just so immense that it's like, he probably knows his story. Like we don't, but it's there, you know? So.
I really I'm sad that in a way, like neither book nor movie, but it would just be such a massive weapon of destruction with the and they kind of stopped that in the Hobbit. I guess I'm thinking there could have been a dragon. I feel like there could have been a dragon somewhere, but
it's not the story.
Yeah.
So do we start a fight then? And where are we on the whole wyverns versus dragons thing? Like, you know, how many legs does a dragon have to have? And
I generally think of dragons having 4 legs plus wings, so 6 limbs.
Yeah. What a Western point of view. So
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Those Chinese snake dragon shit. Meh.
Yeah. That don't have any wings whatsoever.
Yeah. Zelda got robbed.
Right.
Yeah. They are kind of funny looking, the Nazgul, whatever dragons. Like I don't even remember, did he describe a word? Like they're not dragons. They say wyverns.
They just no, because I tried to pay attention to it. They just call them like flying beasts, and you get a couple of descriptions. So I don't fault Peter Jackson at all. I feel like he took some liberties and he made it more definitive than it is in the books in some ways. But like at the same time, I feel like all the pieces that he used were there, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You know, so yeah.
And watching it again yesterday, the common joke criticism of why didn't they ride the eagles into Mordor? It's like they kind of showed why not, because of the Nazgul. They showed why it was way too dangerous for the eagles until that moment where it was finally possible.
I was going to say, but they kind of chip away at that, I feel like, in the movie as well, because they show up at the Black Gate and they fight the Nazgul anyway. And so it's just like
that exact moment when it finally the tide is turning. And the sense that you get out of the books, it's not explicitly said, except for a couple times with Pelennor Fields, is that the fortune of the battle turned and sunlight was shining more down on the battle, and is basically divine intervention pushing the sense of luck. And all of those things happen, and you can see those little hints in this movie too of like, well, the stars are gone because Sauron is too powerful. There's a star again in the sky, and that means that something is turning. And right at the moment when the eagle showed up, it's like there's been so many things stacked up against it. It's at that exact moment when Frodo's at Mount Doom and that Sauron is about to collapse, and then the wyverns or the Nazgul turn away, and the eagles are finally able to succeed in something that would have been a suicide mission.
Right. Okay, so I guess in the book they're described as more bird-like. They've got like beaks and, you know, just described as bird-like and stuff. So maybe not quite super accurate, but they've got like sparse feathers and stuff. So, you know, you kind of see some of that, but they do have long serpentine necks.
So they're like
bat-like
vultures.
wings.
Oh, bat-like wings, but sparse feathers. Yeah, I don't know. Some mix of vulture and bat then.
Yeah, so just kind of interesting, but I mean, it's fairly vague.
I think maybe one of the reasons it was changed, if I were to guess, I think for the time, the look of those creatures is a lot easier to do CGI wise than feathers and stuff.
Could be.
I think that might be could be one of the reasons.
Yeah, you're just laughing at Cody.
Yeah.
We all laugh at Cody all the time.
Yeah.
Wyverns are cool, but who really cares? Because, you know, they'll both will eat you. I'm like, that's not a very discerning and wizardly point of view there, man. So you got to know how many teeth you can see before they eat you. That's how you can tell, you know. But
it's like, so there's a difference between the person who's just going to fight the beast and not care about it, and the person who's going to try to do like biology on it to figure out exactly what kind of creature it is that you're killing. Both are useful because one can tell you it has this poison and not that poison, maybe. Right. The other one's just like, I have a sword, I'm going to hit it.
Right.
Classic archetypes.
Maybe some types of wyverns are allergic to peanuts, you know, and it's really easy to get rid of them that way. You gotta know these things.
Yeah, I agree. So, like, I kind of come at it both ways though, because I find when identifying monsters that like I have more of a kitchen sink approach in the sense that it's like it's handy to have some heirloom silver on hand and everything like that, but I'm not going to sit there and interrogate it. I'm just going to cycle through it, you know, like it might have been from the Voyager episode we were watching earlier where it was like, you know, first you start with the shotgun and you see how effective that was. And then you start ratcheting it up from there. It's like, we got shotguns, we got heirloom silver, we got, you know, garlic, salt. By that time, you've cut down like 3/4 of the supernatural area, you know, like
you have a finite amount of heirloom silver. Don't waste it if you don't need to.
Well, I'm not just going to like shoot it at them or whatever, but yeah. So like,
yeah. I think there's a supernatural episode where they're fighting something where it's like they're not sure how to kill it, and they just like go through the trunk almost like to see what if anything works.
Nice. Yeah, it's almost like that, you know, where it's just like, you know, we're gonna find something that works, but I don't have the time to sit down and analyze this right now. So, but some of that, but that like comes from studying in advance, right? Like you can give yourself an edge by doing the wizardly thing and just reading books and, stuff like that in the first place. But when it comes down to it, like the difference between a vampire or a ghoul or a zombie in the moment is, kind of small. So you've got to just be able to like hit them with a selection of weapons to find out which one works best, but
We've been waiting 3 months to watch this movie, and that we're petering out now.
we've talked about it,
I know.
like,
Like,
well,
it's
I'll say my
wonderful. It's
favorite
great.
meme again because I mentioned it last night. The wife was there and Pippin grabs the Palantir. I'm like, bad news, everybody. Sauron knows everything Pippin knows. Good news, everybody. Pippin don't know shit. So just like,
Yeah, as Gandalf said, it's
He's
like
a
we've been
fool,
extremely
but not a
fortunate.
fool.
yeah,
Yeah, that reminds me. I still dislike how the movies kind of leaned into the Pippin being the bumbling idiot more than clever. He is
he's a
actually
fool,
clever.
but an honest fool.
Yeah,
is
but, like,
Gandalf in the movie, but
the way he figures out his problems of like inside Minas Tirith and in his service and trying to save Faramir is like he went to the correct people, he found the right stuff. He is able to use the tools around him to do exactly what needed to be done. He just also has a dire sense of curiosity. Like he figured out how to get himself and Mary free from the orcs when they were in Two Towers. Is like that was him being clever, not
Right.
him being a bumbling idiot. And just like I wish that was a little bit more shown because I don't want him to be the comic relief in such a way.
right. Well, and
Not there, only Gimli can be the comic relief.
Cantankerously.
yeah, in the books he's a lot more like, I don't know, like amiable or something with Pippin, where it's just like he tells Pippin still like, let me do the talking, but when Pippin like swears his fealty and everything, he's like, what did I freaking tell you about saying things? And then Pippin's like, are you mad? He's like, oh, hell no, I knew you weren't going to listen anyway, you did a good job. And so like he gives him props and he like breaks out into a smile and a laugh and whatever. And so like it's almost like it almost breaks the not theme, what's the word I'm thinking of, like just the atmosphere of the books in a way, because like Gandalf is all but like tap dancing through the politics where he's like, I'm smarter than Denethor, I got Sauron on the ropes, we just got to make sure a couple of people do the right thing and we'll be fine. Whereas like in the movie he's like, we're gonna get our asses kicked, man.
Yeah. He was a little bit more trepidatious throughout everything. Like even like there's a few moments when Gandalf was losing all hope. Like he's saying he sent Frodo to his death and everything is hopeless. And Aragorn is the one who's saying, it's like, no, we can't give up. And I don't believe that Frodo's dead. And I guess letting Aragorn shine in that he's, as they were saying, he's giving hope to everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
But in the books, Gandalf does, like everybody despairs for a minute, but yeah, Gandalf I think is the one that pulls them out of it and just being like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything type of thing. Like, I mean, first of all, you've committed the rest of your armed forces to this battle, so you're going to fight it or die anyway,
Yeah.
But yeah, they just make him a little bit more,
In the books, he's more like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is as he had foreseen, because foresight is a very powerful ability, and Gandalf and Elrond and Galadriel have all been trying to plan things as much as they possibly can.
Right. And I think that's the difference, is because like using the word foresight makes it sound supernatural, especially in this context. And they are crazy smart, but it's more like planning and it's like predicting. It's like playing four-dimensional chess in the sense that they're like, yeah, I mean a little bit, but like Galadriel does have the gift of prophecy, right? But it's
so does
not
Elrond.
locked. But it's not locked in stone. Well, we don't see Elrond use it as much as she did, in Lothlorien, in my opinion. But
right, so Galadriel had one opportunity really to act, to do everything that she could for the rest of the Fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
Elrond has been trying to save his daughter from a human mortal death for thousands of years. And so he knows what's possible. He knows what can happen. And as he says, it's like one possible future, and he doesn't want it to happen, but he has this gift of foresight, and it could be a prophecy. but they absolutely know that there are prophecies out there that are affecting Aragorn, and it's going to affect Arwen. But Galadriel is so ridiculously powerful that she is able to give exactly the right gifts to everyone at that one opportunity in Lothlorien. That is exactly what they needed, that they couldn't possibly have known for. It's like maybe she wasn't certain that they were going to go through Shelob's tunnel, but he gave exactly the right gift.
Right. Well, okay, look. That's a great take, but I'm going to quibble in the sense that she also gave some of the most generic gear that could have been possible. She gave somebody some elven rope. When is elven rope not going to be useful? She gave them a light in the darkness. They're going into Mordor. There's probably about 12 different places that would be immensely useful. Now, did she hedge and say, okay, we've got whatever, but like, did she give him a Nazgul slaying sword? Did she give him a dragon piercing arrow? Those would be like amazingly specific things. Like, wait a minute, where's the spider killing sword? Right?
Well, they already had it. They already had Sting.
Well, ish. Like Sting
she
is
did
a
not
magical
give
sword.
Mary.
I'm just saying they've got the Barrow White sword that is specifically targeted for killing the Witch King, right? Where's the same weapon for Shelob? That would have been specific. Whereas like giving them the light and the darkness thing, like, it worked out that way.
Then specifically Shelob, as they were described, and I was tickled to see in the movie that there was the statues of the bird faces in 4 different directions. If they were watchers, and they used the light to be able to basically break the spell for just a moment to be able to run through it. They didn't show breaking the spell in the movie, but that was something there for anyone who cared about. And that the Star of Arendelle was extremely important.
Sorry, Arendelle, because I caught that last night. It was like, oh, it's an elf. Yeah, it's an elf thing. It's spelled EAR. So like, oh, because I'm an elf, it's got to be ear in the name. Come on, guys.
It was I think
funny.
You're reaching.
Come on, you can laugh. You can laugh.
Nah. Right.
Thank
so
you, Tom.
that thing is extremely useful anywhere in Mordor. Yes, it'd be useful when they were in Moria because they needed a light and all things like that. But how specific her gifts got was that she gave a box of seeds to Sam, and he kept that the whole time, and you only really get to see him using it in the Scouring of the Shire afterwards when they're rebuilding, because the party tree had been burned and all of those things. It was exactly what he needed to rebuild the Shire and be the gardener to save it. Like, again, it needed to recuperate, and it was those seeds that he had, because she knew that was happening.
I'm going to give you this one at least partially, because in her mirror, you see her like looking at the Scouring of the Shire, supposedly, like that.
Yes.
That's been around for a while.
And Sam saw that same thing.
My quibble would be that, again, she gave him hope. She gave him hope, and in the idea that they're going to make it and get out and whatever. But that one at least, but I feel like, again, these are all generic enough that they covered multiple things, like,
absolutely the generic
it's like
cloaks
saying
from elves.
She gave him a silver sword. She knew they were going to fight a werewolf. It's like, yeah, but silver's good in a lot of places against monsters these days. But
very much like the cloaks that they all got, that was one identifiable to all of them. They knew, like, when Pippin finds that cloak on the battlefield, he knew Merry was out there somewhere. Same thing was when Legolas Aragorn game, we were trying to find the hobbits. They found the pin. That was exactly what they needed to identify them. But those cloaks are the generic tool that was just amazing for hiding and keeping them warm. And the same, I mean, you could also say similar about the lambus bread that was given to them that sustained Sam and Frodo when they were in Mordor, because it was elf magic that was keeping them going, more so than just the fact that they needed food. It was a direct antidote to the corruption that was all around them that was sapping them of energy. It wasn't the food that they wanted, but it's what they needed.
But it was the food they needed right now. Sorry, Batman.
Yeah, no, it's exactly it.
Yeah.
Right. Galadriel is ridiculously powerful and
no
a sorceress.
About that. Yeah.
Rings of Power fucked her up, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, it's not done yet, so she might come back around. But yeah, I feel like they definitely didn't handle the forging of the rings quite right. Like they
Mm.
kind of outed Sauron a little early and just all of that stuff. So, but
If we actually dive into Rings of Power, that's going to be a multi-part argument.
yeah,
It's the same person doing the sound music design for Rings of Power and Lord of the Rings, right?
I don't
Or
think
some
so.
such, or some of it, because they sure like it's. I almost think it can't be. I remember like someone saying it was.
I don't
It's
remember who did the sound for Lord of the Rings trilogy. I know that the person who does Rings of Power is Bear McCreary.
because like Lord of the Rings is infinitely better than the series as a score.
I don't know
It's
about
not even close.
infinitely, but Rings of Power isn't perfect. It's got its problems, but I feel
Many
like
of them.
there was a lot of good in there too. So
There was a
I
small
I
amount.
wasn't talking about the show specifically, just the music
Yeah.
of the show.
ah,
Whereas I feel like the Lord of the Rings, it just like you can just hear. I guess maybe it's biased because you grew up with the movies, and I can't not be biased. But I feel like you can hear these are gonna be iconic songs, and Lord of the Rings of Power, not so much.
right. I mean, yeah, I talking about just the music, like the music in the Lord of the Rings movies is fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
you've got the trumpets, and just how can you not be moved to action when you hear, like the main themes start out and any of the associated themes and
And there's
all of
something
that.
very primal about war drums, but they also used them very effectively. It's like they're great to listen to whenever, but the gigantic trolls hitting the gigantic war drums.
Right.
Yeah, great moment.
Yeah, and even the songs, like you get Aragorn singing at the end is like whatever, but like when the hobbits are singing, especially like the Misty Mountains and just all of that stuff, like
Or
they
Pippin
just did
Song to
fantastic.
Denethor.
Pippin, the guy, but he's a really good singer.
Yeah,
I think also like something I wanted to touch on is how great like the specific moment is like acting wise in their faces when Mount Doom blows up and they think Frodo died there.
yes, they're like, yeah, we did it, and then immediately panic and like despair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's just there. We're just looking at their faces to the reaction to the thing
Yeah.
blowing up, and it's so well acted. Like you just
Yeah.
feel it.
The other one that I shushed everybody else for along those same lines is when Carl Urban finds Éomer.
Yeah,
That gets
was
me every
really good.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That gets me every time. There is actual like distraught, despair when he finds her and he thinks that she's dead, and like they do it in half slow motion and just all and muted and everything, and there's just pure anguish there.
Just his voice when you hear his scream, you don't even need to see him. The emotion he put into that voice is
Right.
out of this world.
Yeah. And it's a hell of a contrast to when he played Judge Dredd, so yeah, he's just, I mean, talk about range. Like, dude can
Absolutely.
frown for 2 hours and he can, just have total anguish and despair. So
There's a couple times my husband just started giggling because he would look at Carl Urban as Éomer and just think of dread memes.
sure, yeah, his helmet's a little too open for Dredd, but if he had a faceplate it would be perfect. But like I've been joking about that since the movie came out, when like right after we got out of it I was like, they cast him perfectly, and everyone's like, what do you mean? I was like, dude, did you see his frown? He has the most intense frown I have ever seen in my entire life. He walked in for his audition and he just frowned, and everyone's like, that's perfect, can you hold it for 2.5 hours, because that's exactly what we need, because it's like all you see is this much of him the entire movie, and you've got all the expression and everything you need. He like reloads and he's like, I can't even frown like that. Like right now I'm too laughing too much anyway, but like I just can't even frown. Yeah. Like
it is really hard to try to pick out who was the weakest actor in these movies because they're all fantastic.
Yeah, everybody brought their A game.
It's easily Sam.
we're gonna
I'm
fight.
kidding. I'm kidding. A lot of
Yeah, I
people
know.
are misunderstood.
I was like, I know you're. I'm gonna give you a chance to retract that statement before I have to get me axe. So,
Yeah, he was a great part of those new Star Trek movies. Him as Bones was
yes,
it carried a lot.
he is one of the better parts of those movies. Even some of the ridiculous things he has to do. He's also fantastic in Chronicles of Riddick. You know, is
Oh, yeah.
where I really fell in love with him the first time, I think. So
Same.
but,
Like he was.
yeah.
Like, I named a dog Vaco because I love the character too much. It's just
Nice.
See, we've had this discussion. Was Orlando Bloom the weakest? It's like I don't know because Legolas is Legolas. He doesn't.
Right.
He has so much less to work with.
I
Awesome.
joked about him in the Dimholt Road where it's like that moment where you see him just look everywhere else for 30 seconds. It was like, oh yeah, somebody walked in with a low cut dress and he's trying not to, like, hey, Legolas, where are my eyes? Just like, so.
Legolas isn't very expressive because he's an elf, but he is not flustered because he's a fucking elf. Nothing flusters them.
Right. I believe it's starting to affect me.
My hand is tingling.
Yeah.
He can't hold his liquor.
Yeah.
See, I don't notice my hands tingling, but I do notice my face going numb if I drink too much.
Can we
Okay. Cody, how dare you? How dare you say anything about Hugo Weaving?
Hugo
no,
is
he
questionable.
doesn't, again, he doesn't have a lot to work with because he's an elf. All the elves are getting hate because they're elves.
Hugo Weaving has the exact amount of gravitas and everything that you need from Elrond. The problem is he doesn't look like an elf lord, and so they really should have just found somebody else. Like we were quibbling about that it was like they didn't do a good enough job with some of the elves in the sense, and like I quibbled with this, but this was my wife's take, and I was like, I'll give you Elrond because like I never really like I like Hugo Weaving, he's fine, but he had just come off the Matrix, and I felt like they were just like, hey, let's do star power or something rather than
it was totally worth it in that way. But
I'm pretty sure they were filming those simultaneously. Or something.
Were they?
I don't think Matrix was out when he was hired for Lord of the Rings.
Well, the first one would have been because maybe when he was hired because it was 1999, so
yeah. Okay, so yeah, the first one probably, and then yeah.
But
Hugo Weaving, one, he carried the Matrix movie, and then he was the perfect Elrond, in my opinion, because he had the gravitas, the severity.
I had some sun yesterday, but the hot takes in here, geez, guys, like
I truly think out of the Matrix, like if Agent Smith wasn't so perfectly executed, the movie would have failed. He is the reason that it worked so well.
He's a really good part of the first movie. I think you're going to find some arguments about like the second and third movies at that point.
No. I'm talking about the first one.
Okay. All right.
To me,
he carried the first one.
It's definitely important to limit the scope. So
yeah. And fuck number 4. But
to me, it was kind of Morpheus. I don't know.
Yeah,
he was great as Elrond because the severity that he brought to it was needed. What he says in the first movie of like, I was there, I saw humans fail, and all of like that description.
No, I mean, close your eyes and I could listen to Hugo Weaving be Elrond all day, but like, how did they find the only prematurely balding elf in the entire of Middle Earth? Right, like just
wigs.
So. Yeah.
I mean, he's what, 3,000-4,000 years old? Someone's going to have a receding hairline at some point.
Yeah. When 3,000 or 4,000 years old you are, look as good you will not, right?
You're right. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And they had really good quality wigs, which I'll give him that too. Because when the wigs suck, everything just kind of doesn't look right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying we do this, but it might be fun to do like an alternate casting, kind of thing. But I was like, who would even have like the gravitas you would need to fill that role and whatever, and to be able to narrate? Like,
certainly not the guy that got in Rings of Power.
Yeah,
which is a pity because that guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's prettyish and whatever,
Well,
but he
I've-
doesn't
he
have the
was-
gravitas for sure. Yeah.
If you didn't recognize him and if you hadn't seen it, he was young Ned in Game of Thrones at that very important flashback. That was like, that guy can act. He can do severe and serious. He could have been an Elrond that would have been recognizable. He's been told not to. That's the problem. The actors they have, for the most part, are pretty good in Rings of Power. They've been told not to be good. At that time, of who could have been casted instead of Hugo Weaving, I have no idea.
Right. That's another thing too. It's like, yeah, what did you have at the time? See, I totally forgot he was V for Vendetta, but
Right.
like you
Another
don't see his
completely...
face, so it's fantastic. He's got the severe look that you want from Agent Smith, right? And so it's like, it's not like I have a problem with him and his face. He's just not pretty enough to be an elf, right? It's just like, he's a great actor. He's great in a bunch of different things. What I wanted to do is like look at his filmography to see who he's starring against, to see if there's somebody else that matches his energy that might have been like another good fit. Like if you were to do it today, they'd get what's one of Andreas's Danish people to play him, like one of the Skarsgårds or Mikkelsen. Yeah,
they
is the other one I was thinking.
The like, Mikkelsens are Danish, yes.
Yeah, like I said. So, but
I
so that might
quite
be
like
interesting.
Mads Mikkelsen. I think he looks even less like
Is
an
that
elf.
like a contractual thing?
Huh?
I'm just wondering if Justin has to fill in for EG when EG's
Yes.
not here, or
it's the beard. So yeah. No, I think I would be more of a jerk, but EG kind of like capitalized on that and like monopolized it. So
that's his niche.
So yeah, like I was just like, EG's on it. I don't have to be a jerk. That allows me to be good cop. So then I can be like, oh, everybody be nice to Andreas. So
yeah, please, thank you. Everybody be nice to me. I want to touch on one thing with the Lord of the Rings here, like how insane is it that at the time Peter Jackson got away with making Lord of the Rings for the budget and the scope and everything, and Peter Jackson got to do that.
Right. It's more like, look at Peter Jackson's filmography, and be like, who did he what to make sure that they
did he make a deal with the devil? I don't know.
I did see Stein's names in the producer list at the credits.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I was almost thinking about it a little bit with Isengard, and my brain is done for today apparently. So Saruman,
Christopher
and
Lee.
the fact, well, yeah, but specifically the fact that he like does a somersault from the top of a tower and lands on a spike and then gets dragged under the water. It was like, oh, that's Peter Jackson. He had to put this in because that matches, like, what is it? Dead Alive is like, if you haven't seen that, on the one hand, maybe don't, but on the other hand, like, it's almost obligatory. But it's like, I kick ass for the Lord and magic zombies, and they have to use a lawnmower because you can't just shoot them in the head or dismember them. It's not enough. So it's just like, that's Peter Jackson before Lord of the Rings. And so it's just like, what now? Like, that guy's making a Lord of the Rings movie. Like, imagine, if you will, they're doing a reboot of the Lord of the Rings, but they've hired Quentin Tarantino. Like, what you're going to get out of a Quentin Tarantino movie. And I'm being a little cheeky with, Peter Jackson. Like, he's done other stuff, but it's just like his filmography at the time wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, epic fantasy. Yeah, let's do that. Right. Imagine Frodo and Sam with their, sideways Glocks and all their, curses and stuff. And like, hey, they're like, hey, Gollum, does he look like a pussy? Just pick a Quentin Tarantino movie and a line. Like, it's just like, no, what?
Be a
difference
like
there,
heavy emphasis on Hobbit feet, like
right?
Yeah, God.
Which, I mean, it's not unemphasized in Peter Jackson's version, but
Yeah, but we don't need to give it the Tarantino treatment.
Right.
Let's don't get beat, man.
Still, you gotta give kind of Tarantino like balls, like giving him for the balls. Like, okay, he's a pretty new director, writer. He writes a vampire movie. He really likes feet, so he puts himself in there drinking from feet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, gotta the man knew what he wanted.
That is true, but I please no one ever let him touch Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it was just kind of an example that was like,
yeah, no, it's a good example. It brings
this,
to mind
like
the right things. It's just like I don't want them to be doing a reboot of Lord of the Rings at all because I'm pretty sure that everyone's gonna fuck it up. It was already done and it was great. And what more is there to do?
The movies are really, 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 really good. I am actually to like a flip coin of a different franchise, right? I'm excited about the possibility of the Harry Potter reboot because I don't think the movies are that great. I think the casting in them is good.
Were some like
they just didn't get enough detail in them.
Are we doing that already?
Yeah, they're doing a TV show.
And because I've got it in front of me, just to circle back a little bit. So literally Dead Alive, Heavenly Creatures, Forgotten Silver, Frighteners, which is good. Don't get me wrong. And then Lord of the Rings. And it's just like, excuse me, what?
I don't know how he got away with that.
Yeah. They were like,
really
he probably
pitch,
was like,
I guess.
Here's the thing, Dimholt Road. And they're like, that makes sense. Ghosts and shit. You got it, my dude. But, like...
also just the budget and that he was greenlit. He was like small B movies, and then
he
must have had 2 years of filming, didn't it, for these 3 movies, and then like another couple years of editing as they were coming out. It just that
he went over budget like I don't know 8 times or something. Yeah, I don't know how he.
Yeah, you're reading Cody's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I'm not even like, giving it.
I'm not sure we can be friends. I'm going to pretend I didn't read this to preserve the friendship. Yeah. Like Bruce Willis is Gimli, Ben Affleck is Legolas, coming off of Armageddon. Brendan Fraser as Aragorn, which I don't hate. Oh wow, this is bad. I love it. At least you admit it. Like, yeah, but and that's why we started. We did a little segment of that for this show, right? Where it was like alternate casting and because like so much of IMDb was like, did you know Nicolas Cage almost was Superman? And just like imagine the Justice League with like Nicolas Cage and Ben Affleck, and man, if he was Batman, how terrible would that be? No, I'm just kidding. But just. Like Aragorn, right? There's like 30 other A-listers that didn't land Aragorn, so
that was the funny story, right? It was given to Stuart Townsend, and the guy refused to show up to practice or act or something like that, and so they cut him on like day 2, and I got Viggo Mortensen into it, which is like best decision ever because Stuart Townsend as the Lestat and Queen of the Damned is just like, I cannot see him as Aragorn. Maybe it's because I've been too imprinted by Viggo Mortensen, but there was also Sean Connery was offered Gandalf to no.
Right. Like nothing against Sean Connery, but he only is Sean Connery. Like, can he kill the accent long enough to be a wizard?
I mean,
I want to even
immortal.
Yeah, I want to do a Sean Connery accent. What's a good line for?
Why didn't they just make
I didn't
Sean
pass
Connery
through fire and shadow to bandy words with a witless worm. Like you got me. That.
Why didn't they just make his character in the Highlander fucking Scottish instead of Italian?
Right.
Why?
And why did they have a Belgian dude try to be Scottish? God. Yeah. Highlander was bad.
I kind of like the main guy. There. He's also good as Raiden, I think.
No, he's not. He's just been damaged.
Wow.
I like him. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, that brings to mind.
Interesting.
They probably would cast Benedict Cumberbatch as Elrond now, wouldn't they?
He could be a good Elrond.
He could be okay. I don't know if he could. withstand.
He was a dragon.
But can he perform as well as Hugo Weaving did? I don't know. He's not a bad actor, but like Hugo Weaving's
He's better than Hugo
class of his
Weaving.
own. Excuse me.
I said it.
No.
Yeah.
And the same problem, it's like with Kate Blanchett was so good as Galadriel that like you're
She could
setting up
still be
anyone else
cast.
for failure.
Yeah.
In my
Look,
opinion.
I watched her in Ragnarok. She could totally still be cast. So
yeah. But with the Rings of Power thing, it's like anyone trying to withstand up against that Galadriel, it's like they have to be fucking fantastic or it's just failure. And that's what it was. We'll have to have this argument at some point because I can't stop. But
I don't know. It doesn't sound like an opinion at all for some reason. So, but yeah.
You know, everything's an opinion unless Alex says it. Then it's facts and correct.
Right.
Very EG of her.
I am the director. I do have that authority.
Yes, boss.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's about all I had to say, at least.
We'll be at this all day if we continue. So
I
I think
know.
it's a good lull to take care of.
Yeah, we should release ourselves from this to go do something else. Next week, Dresden, and the week after that, what are we doing?
Are we doing the Arnold thing?
Maybe.
Maybe Justin has set us on a path that I don't want to go down, but we'll see.
I don't know if I set us on a path so much as like somebody was like, here is a cart and wheels, and then I was like, here is a track, and we
so
can
you
follow
set the
it.
cart and wheels on the track.
I mean,
down the path.
I guess I set us on this path, literally, technically, but you know,
I was more
more
referring to what you're currently reading.
Do what?
I was more referring to what you're currently reading. That would be very apropos for a whole podcast.
Yeah.
Are you gonna read it?
I don't know. That's why I don't want. I don't know.
That's what I figured. Like I am with you. I thought about suggesting it as well. Like this would be a great set of topics and whatnot, but that's committing people to reading like 4,000 pages of books over the next like several months and whatnot. So, you know. Because it's like if they're all 800 pages, like Jesus, guy, like slow down.
I'm pretty sure they only get bigger, but I don't remember them being that long. I devoured them in like a week when I first got them.
Let's see. What do we got? I got 3 of them right here. So, yeah, that's First Lords. That's Princeps. Oh, shit. I've got 2 copies of Princeps.
And you never knew until now.
Oh, and there's 6 books. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one has the dust cover on and one doesn't, so they looked different to me, and that was as far as I went into it. But well, and I guess this is different too. They're not as bad because it's 800 mobile pages, I guess. You know, so it's only 384 for Princeps Fury.
Right. You have to go by word count because it's the only thing that'll be roughly the same.
Right.
But
it's like 460 something for First Lords, but so yeah, I mean, still that's 24,000 pages, you know, whatever. But it's an F ton. They're big. It's a lot, but you know, we don't have to talk about that. I'm gonna keep reading them. Not before bed though, apparently, because that was fun the other night. They introduced the Takers from the Vord. And I was sleeping with the kids because the wife was out and whatever. And so like, I just kept being like listening for chittering and, you know, something moving around the room that shouldn't be and whatever. And my favorite part was that like the kids had been out and I got up to use the restroom and I came out and the bedroom door was open, which I almost never allow because that's one of the few triggers that still catches me in my subconscious. So like the door is almost always closed and I came out and it was wide open and I'm like, I know for a fact that I'm the only conscious creature in the house right now. Like the dogs are literally locked up in another bedroom and the kids are sound asleep. So yeah, it was a fun night. So it's been a minute since something like that got me, let alone from a book. Like it's been since I read
horror
it.
Buff, really. So like of all of us, you're the one into the most horror.
Well,
so
The difference is like sometimes I still get triggered by stuff like that on occasion, but for me it's just fun. Like I really enjoy watching a movie or reading a book that keeps me up at night. It's a weird kind of thing, but I'm like, that's when I know I'm having a good time, is because like
Right.
I didn't get any sleep last night. It sucks today, but it's a lot of fun. And it was
I
kind of
get
one of
that.
those, and yeah, so.
So I guess we'll be undecided. And yes, Cody, it is Codex Alera by Jim Butcher. It's the series that he did that basically as a competition joke of whether he can combine Lost Roman Legion with Pokemon, and it became a bestseller series. So
Right.
And somehow he fit in Cirques and a bit of horror.
werewolves, whatever you call them.
Yeah, the cane. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
they're basically just werewolves, but they don't change or whatever. So,
Yeah.
because I was like, are these like gnolls? Like, what are we doing? But it's like, no, they're very much wolves. Just like they're Alaran nightmares is what they are. So yeah, Ambassador Varg right now is one of my favorite characters.
I
but,
figured you'd like him. Once you got to him, like he's going to be exactly
that
on your.
Yeah, those were the parts where I was laughing out loud, where it was like, Tavi just jumping in because he is right and, putting him back on his heels, and the whole like, sure, you're going to kill me, but we're going to both die stupid deaths. Is that what you want? So yeah.
That. And if Andreas ever gets around to it, I think he would actually really enjoy Max.
Yeah. Max is also a favorite, but, maybe just a little much more carousing
I've read
than
the first half or so of the book.
I don't think so. I think his friends don't get introduced until the second book, right?
Actually, I think they were introduced in like the
I've
first
read the
chapter,
first
but you don't
book,
get to
and
know
I've
them
read-
very well.
I've
Right.
read the first half of the second book like 3 times.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, you'll know.
I get
But-
to the part where he's like, I vaguely remember him sneaking into the Beast Men's somehow, doing some spying with them for some reason.
The Canum. So
Probably.
yeah, because I'm 70% of the way through the book. So I think we've finally ratcheted the tension until the ratchet's about to break. And then now it's like, not that things haven't been happening, but it's pretty much like the downhill part of the roller coaster if he's, follows his Dresden style
Yeah, which he
that
does.
sort of thing. But yeah, so like that was kind of brutal at some points too, where it's like, I get it, like how much more could you pile on? Just let go already, where it was just like, oh, and this and this and this. And there's like 5 cataclysms at once going on right now that any one character only knows about 3 of them. And so I'm just like, please, will Odin wake up and save us? Will somebody fill that slot? Like, what are we doing here? And yeah, so.
Yep. And this is book 2, where he's still a kid with no power when it gets progressively
Spoilers.
more.
Yeah.
But
I'm curious how that all unfolds, but it's like you can, if you know the book titles, like you can kind of figure out what the trajectory is. I figured out the reveal about who Dad is already, which makes everything make sense. What was the other one? Oh,
I think you figure that out in like book 1, don't you?
You can get some of the hints, but you get much more overt hints in book 2. And...
Well, in book 2, it's literally like Asana and Amara are having an argument about whether or not the First Lord Gaius is worth, Gaius Sextus is worth the, the loyalty or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, his mom fell in love with a soldier who died at the battle. It's like, shit, the First Lord's own son died at the battle. I'm like, oh shit, it's the same guy, isn't it? It was just like, it was just one of those things. Sorry, spoilers. And then like the reveal of Katai being in, it's like, she's there somewhere, but it's like, oh shit, she's the thief. And I figured that out like 5 pages before he catches up with her the second time.
Yeah. And that's pretty much how it goes. If like you'll figure it out just before Tavi does, which is probably the right kind of pacing for those types of reveals.
Sure.
They were really good books.
Yeah. And I like the fact like that he's leaning into the magic system, which is one of the things that I liked about Dresden, where it was like, we're going to break into a magical prison, but it's going to work because we know what the rules are. Yeah. It's not just like we just found some MacGuffin to make it happen. and him starting to realize like, oh wait, I'm not all pathetic and crippled. I'm not even the only guy on this continent that doesn't have magic,
Yeah.
So yeah, he's starting to lean into that a little bit more.
Yeah, the moment, it's hard to say it's why it was my favorite. I guess just like there's a moment in book 2 where Tavi has been beaten and he's just lying on the road and he's watching a fight between some of the high lords of the whole realm, and they're talking about personal old griefs with each other, and he's literally just sitting there like, please don't squish me, please don't squish me. And
is that the alley where Brensis catches up to him, or is it later? Because
that might have been it, because then it was Lady Placida.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't remember her name. That was so good. Like, I don't even know which side she's on right now, but it was like it mirrored some of my favorite parts out of the Harry Potter movies, and I know what that sounds like, but still, there was that clear tension between them, and he's like, "You've made a powerful enemy," and she's like, "You have no idea how little I care," and I was like, hot damn, that's probably the best line in this book up to this point. She's like, and yeah.
Back at him's fury to me of like, he is powerless and puny, and he's in the middle of all these things, and they are so much more powerful than him. He cannot keep up, even if he had the ability to. Like, it's just I don't know. That's what kind of drove home what the rest of the series was going to be. It was about him figuring out all these things and coming to terms with it, coming up to their level to be able to treat them as equals, and dealing with the fact that he has a huge handicap. That's the word.
At least from their perspective, like literally everybody in the realm has magic,
and he's the only one who doesn't so far, or pretty much.
Yeah, and it's a good place for me personally, because I'm playing in Eberron, so having a magic, a wide magic world where everybody's got some magic, and it influences their technology. The Vord are going to influence my bad guys going forward, because there's a lot more parallels. Like, I had some stuff lined up that was like, oh, that's really close to what I was going to do actually, and it's like, I mean, everybody's going to think I got the idea the other way, right? Because it's going to wind up with that way with Mirror, right? Since we've done, a bunch of other stuff in the multiverse, with Marvel and all of these other things too. And so, but yeah, I'm excited, and hopefully they're just get better. But
I think they do. And something that he continues to do is, which we see also in Dresden, that the bad guys have their reasons. And even if they're still the bad guys, there are moments where you can, I don't want to say you can sympathize, because that's whatever. It's not that you
understand
the
them,
motivations. You do understand them, but you do, like, they're not comical insert bad guy here. They are their own complete characters, even when they're not human.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make good villains, right? That's
and they are. I mean, like, like people in the books, right? Like, the characters are all like, oh, we're on Gaius's team, and he's right and good and just, except for a couple of people who know him personally, and everybody else is like evil and bad, and they're murder and treacherous and whatever. But it's like several of them that are the bad guys, quote unquote, are like, if we don't do this, it's going to be really bad for everybody. We're trying to do the right thing. And so, like, that's where you kind of get it. Whereas Fidelius is just like Goodman Gray of like, I'm just doing a job. Yes, I'm a murdering bastard,
I promise he becomes more complicated. And
sure.
And
like right now,
really
right now I hate him because he's a monster in human form, where it's just like, we're reading the book through Asana's eyes as much as everybody else's, where it's like, you tried to murder me and my family. That makes it personal, whether you thought you were just doing a job or whatever, but I can see that they're starting to shift those positions around a little bit, because I'm at that scene where she and Fidelius are just leaving after he helped her. Spoilers. I mean, how old's the book series? It's almost the statute of limitations on spoilers, but so she's starting to see him a little bit as a human, or at least poke at him, and he's, and her allegiances might be lightening up a little bit. So I'm like, how far are we going to take this? And I'm curious how all that's going to go, and but it's it's good because it's got me thinking. I'm not just reading it and just being like, oh my God, can we get to the next cool fight or something? I'm actually trying to like, where is he going to take this story and all of this other stuff? So yeah.
So if we
Okay,
did
well,
want
now
to
we're
do a
way
group
over.
read of this, it's been like 10 years since I've read them. So I don't know. I'm down. I don't know if anyone else is.
I guess, I don't know. I'm just in the middle of it already. So, you let me know if we want to do this instead of Arnold.
Andreas.
Shame.
I don't know. I tried so many times.
Just read the book. Can you read the book?
Use eyeballs. I swear, use eyeballs.
It's been better for me anyway, if that counts for anything. So,
and they're so pretty on your wall. If you get them physical, they're really pretty.
Yeah, I'll think on it. I'll think.
Okay.
Well, shit. I shouldn't have looked at that cover. This one's less spoilery because I have no idea what's going on, but
Yeah,
he's gonna drown. Oh no!
Oh no!
Well, that was a huge diversion at the end of Return of the King, but
Right.
On par with us.
Return of a Different King.
Sure. All right. The topics, I guess, still to be decided. Next week's Dresden, we'll figure that out probably 5 minutes beforehand.
Never.